Imagine walking through your community and having no public spaces for the children who live in the area to use, or nice areas for you to go and enjoy and just walk through. Um, I think that it's easy for us to take for granted the communal spaces that we have in our areas. So today we're going to have a conversation with a guest who has a little bit of insight on what it takes to make these spaces happen for us. So I hope that you will grab a cup of coffee or tea or whatever it is you want to enjoy and sit back, join in the conversation because it's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. Well, good morning and happy Saturday. It is August 30th. I'm absolutely shocked that we're at the end of August already and that September is just around the corner. For those of you who are new here, welcome to Coffee Breaks with Steve. No, I am not Steve. I am Carissa, and I am the director of Coffee Breaks with Steve, and I'll be hosting today. And I want to apologize in advance because I have some allergies going on and my voice is a little raspy. And normally I would help with some coffee. I want to tell you a little story. You know, when you get the bottled drinks at the store and they say not to drink it if the little cap doesn't pop? It's a real deal, folks, because my cap didn't pop and I still tried to drink it. I don't recommend. It's a sad, sad day. So I don't have coffee because sadly mine is dead. Anyway, so please bear with me and my voice. Where is Steve? Where is Steve? Well, I can't tell you that. That would ruin the fun. Those of you who have been following along might know that our usual host, Steve, is not here for a couple of weeks. He actually is traveling with his wife, Carol. They are traveling in several destinations. And they like to play a game sometimes when they travel. It's called Travenger Hunt. And it's really fun to follow along with Steve on his Facebook and see the different clues that he gives about where they're visiting, different landmarks, different places that they've gone, and play along with the game. You can go and comment on his posts, take your best guess. Google is allowed, of course. It can take away some of the fun, so you want to try to figure it out yourself. But there is a grand prize at the end of Travenger Hunt. I've won a couple of times. My husband has won. It is totally worth it to play along and try to win. I treasure my prizes. So if you're following Steve, I encourage you to join in on the fun with Travenger Hunt. Um, but I wanted to get us straight into today's topic. So let's start off with our sweet and savory. Oh, I wanted to say hi to people while they're here too, because I know Shalane is here and she's going to get very excited about the charcuterie. Good morning, Kimberly and Shalane. Rick is here. If you are here, excuse me, and you haven't said hello, please make sure to say hello in the chat. We want you to join in on the conversation today. We want to say hello to you when you're here and all that. Yes, the charcuterie. I know, it's so exciting. So let's see what we have going on today. Not a lot going on, but one very important birthday. We do have my Uncle Rod Garlic. His birthday is coming up this next week, so we want to extend a happy, happy birthday to Rod. If you have a special day that's coming up, an event, a birthday, a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, anniversary, anything important to you that you'd like us to know about and to share with our Coffee Breaks with Steve community, we would love to engage in that celebration with you. So please email us the details on that for your event to cbwsteve@comcast.net. We would love to join in the fun. Well, we're going to get right into today's topic. So, as I mentioned before, our outdoor spaces, it's really easy to just kind of accept the fact that they're there. They just pop up one day and we just take advantage of the fact that they're there and we use them. But what goes into making those spaces happen? What's happening behind the scenes? How much work and effort people are involved in making those happen? And how can you maybe get involved in helping with that? Our guest today is none other than my husband, Jason Wheelock, who actually serves as the chairman of the Vernonia Parks Committee. So our town is a smaller town, And he has been the chairman of our Parks Committee for a couple of years now, and prior to that, served as the vice chair and as a committee member. And so we're going to have a little conversation with him today about his role in working with the parks in the city, what that really actually means, and how you can get involved in your own areas to make your spaces enjoyable, and how we can all do that in our spaces. So here is our conversation with Jason. So, Jason, I want to say thank you, first of all, for joining us for this conversation today. So first and foremost, you work with the Parks Committee in our city, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and what is your title with the Parks Committee?
So I am the chairman and director of the City Parks Committee, and what we do is basically develop our parks and our campgrounds for from year to year, and come up with new ideas and ways to improve.
So, when you talk about working on the parks and the campgrounds and things like that, do you think that people in general really stop to think that much about the planning and work and money that goes into the outdoor spaces that they spend time in? What are your thoughts on that?
No. They typically just assume they make a recommendation and we just say yes or no. But there are several channels that we have to go through, several budgetary things we have to look at. And so it's an entire process. So we could get a million ideas, but only use 999,000.
Right. So, I'm thinking about the parks and spaces that I've spent time in growing up. For example, in the Beaverton area, because we're from Portland and metro area, essentially, is kind of our general area. And I grew up in a suburb, and we had a lot of parks around there. There was a really big one called Greenway Park. And I never once in my life stopped to think about, what goes into making that space happen. It's a very large Greenway area. That's why it's called Greenway. Um, so in our city, how many parks do we have?
Well, let's see. There's Vernonia Lake, Spencer, Shea, Hawkins, Anderson. In the immediate city limits, probably 6 or 7 active parks.
Yeah. And then also, so the lake counts as one as well. So
Yes.
even though, I mean, technically there's like basically a swing set there, but the lake area itself is handled primarily by the kind of joint parks committee and the city, right? You guys work together.
Yeah, some projects are more through the city's budget as opposed to the parks development budget. So they do handle some bigger projects and they just kind of counsel with us on certain ideas in regards to the bigger projects. But typically, we handle most all the development things in all the parks.
So I want to talk a little bit about some aspects of what that means. So I used to be a member of the Parks Committee. I no longer serve on the committee. I served on the committee with Jason for a year when he was the vice chair, and then now he's moved up as chairman. And I was really surprised at what goes into even just managing the parks, beyond developing and creating a park. What goes into keeping the parks managed, changes that have to be done in the park, ideas that people have with the parks and things like that. So I want to talk about some of the things that surprised me when I was on the committee with you and see if you can expound on them a little bit. So one of the things that I remember very specifically happened when I was on the committee is we were working on upgrading some of the parks and campgrounds in the area. And we had a company come in that specializes in like playground equipment and playground spaces. And they did a presentation for us. I was shocked at the cost. I'm thinking about, so I teach preschool, and some of the pieces that we were talking about when we were planning these upgrades to the parks are pieces that we have at my play school. So I'm thinking about like there's this one piece of equipment that's just literally a metal pole with a cup seat on it, like think the teacups at Disneyland, and it spins around. So a kid can sit inside it and it spins. That's all it is. It's like it's this big around. It's not a large piece of equipment. But when we were talking about potentially putting those in at our parks, what was the ballpark figure for one of those spinners?
It can run as simple as $1,500 to $2,000, as high as $5,000
For that one little piece of equipment. And then you think about the really large play structures, and we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars for one play area in a park. And that's not including the cost of the actual construction. That's not including permits. That's not including the ground cover, which was a whole topic in that presentation about like what kind of, do you use padding? Do you use the rubber material that they have? Do you use bark chips? Like that all goes into this process, right?
Yes.
So how do you guys make decisions when you have all these options in front of you? You have huge price point in front of you. And we're not a big city. I mean, it's a little different depending on the size of the city you're in. If you're in a really large metropolitan area, your parks planners might have a larger budget. We have a pretty small budget to work with.
It's very tiny.
So when you guys are thinking about these outdoor spaces and how people are going to use them and the fact that they have to last a really long time, I mean, how do you make these decisions?
Well, basically, we come up with what's common in a lot of the big city parks, what tends to be used more than other things, safety features,
That's a big one.
yeah, upgrades to old equipment that might include new features like little extensions or little expansion packs that can be used.
That could potentially save some money if you're not replacing a whole piece of equipment. You're just maybe doing some upgrades or add-ons to it. Okay, okay.
Because we recently, within the last few years, we have put a full-size playground equipment piece down at one of our campgrounds. It took almost a year to go through that process, and the one piece was over 10 grand.
Yeah.
So even just that one piece, just to develop that, can take a very long time, and it has to be budgeted for a very long period of time to make sure that there's money for it. And then we have to basically hope that our parks are being used enough to generate the income to buy that said equipment. So it might be a waiting period before we can even put it in.
That's another thing is, I never have thought about, oh, look, there's a new park. How long did it take for them to plan it? We just kind of take the parks in our area as just always being there. Or if a new park pops up, I'm thinking about the skate parks, the skate park that we built. A new park pops up, a new skate park pops up, and it's like, oh, that's cool. That just arrived there. Well, no, in some cases it took years of work. One example of that is that down at our lake, there's been a long process of talking about an RV campground, which falls into the Parks Committee purview, right? So how long on that project? How long has it been since that project was pitched initially?
Originally, it was pitched by a community member to me, and we walked it 6 months before COVID hit.
So that was five years ago. And this project has not come to fruition yet. It's still in planning stages.
Last year, we got our first grant to move forward with ground removal to start laying out the grid for the campground. And that grant took almost a year to be approved.
Yeah. So 5 years into this planning process, and has the ground even been broken on this yet?
The ground has not been broken.
So 5 years still in planning, and there's momentum building for it. Grants are being granted and things like that. But still 5 years in, and a project is still being worked on.
One of the biggest problems with doing a big project like this is when you're doing grants, they will approve your grant and then want you to do a match.
But you have to raise a certain amount of money,
yes,
as well.
And we can do that through doing work on the project ourselves as a city and taking it out of our own budget, or we can come up with revenue to match said grant to move forward with it. And so right now it's been a year of planning for that match and how we're going to succeed in doing that. So that's where the Parks Committee is got their hands tied, because now it's all up to the city and them dealing with the grant committee with the state. So we just have to now sit, now that we've gone to city council and got everything approved, and wait for the city to come to us and let us know, hey, we have your money, we can build now. So we just move on to the next project until that comes through, and then we get a month-to-month update. Sometimes it can be up to 6 months before we get an update. But
so you touched on another topic that I think is something people don't really think about, and it's the funding for these projects. So, in your community, where does the money come from for these nice outdoor spaces to come into being? And I think it's really easy, and I'm speaking from my personal experience on this. So please don't be offended, but it's really easy for me to grumble about taxes and things like that, but I know having children and living in a space where we really like to be outdoors a lot, I actually really appreciate that we have so many great outdoor spaces here in our small town. And I know as a preschool teacher, how much the families that I work with appreciate the spaces they can take their children to. And so I think it's really easy for us to grumble and moan about having to pay taxes and things like that, but they go towards things like this. Not only do taxpayer dollars go towards this, but you mentioned grants. So there's a lot of working with the state to try to find ways that you can, even things like that might seem outside the box, like ADA grants, right? That was something that we talked about where if we're looking into making ADA accessible facilities or equipment within a park, that could potentially have granted access to an ADA grant, right?
Partially, it can be intertwined in the grant writing. It's really good to have a grant writer who has experience on your committee. That is for sure. Somebody who's dealt with it. But you can go for a grant that includes ADA funds, and the two grants can be written in as one. It really depends on how much ADA you're trying to go and develop. If it's just one piece of the equipment, it probably won't be focused on that. But if like 50 and 50, you know, you're probably going to need to write a grant for both individually. But if it's just a piece of equipment that you want to make accessible, there's dozens of different types of ways to write a grant, and there's different types of places that you can get funds that you don't even know exist. So having that experienced grant writer helps. But yeah, it's in the wording. It's basically proving that it'll be used, the money will go to the right place, and it'll be built appropriately per the grant. So there's a lot of focus and a lot of time in writing these grants to make sure that we're reaching out to the right funds, if that makes sense.
There have also been some situations, and it may seem like working on a parks committee, you wouldn't run into situations that are necessarily sticky situations, but there have been sticky situations that you've dealt with on the parks committee. So, for example, you mentioned that people can come to you with ideas and say, this is something that we want to do, but it may not be something that either you can make happen through the parks committee. It may have to go through a different route, like through the city. It may just not be a very feasible idea to execute. One of the things that I know that came up on the Parks Committee here was there's been talk about smoking bans in the parks. There's been talks about managing trash and recycling in the parks and how to manage that differently. And these are ideas that anybody in the community can come to you with. There's the way that our town is set up. There is a creek that runs through the middle of town, and in the summertime, they dam up the creek and it backs up and becomes a swimming hole.
Yes.
And there's actually a kiddie pool that's kind of built into the side there, and that backfills up. And we call it Dewey Pool.
Dewey Pool, yes.
And there's been people who've come to us and said, it's not really that accessible for people who have mobility issues. Really, the best way to get in and out of the water is a kind of old metal ladder on the side of the wall to get in and out, which is not great for a lot of people to use. And the only other way is to either jump in, or there's basically like kind of a mud path that kind of goes down and around, which can be slippery and a little bit treacherous. And there was some suggestion that, hey, maybe we could build in a staircase where that mud is. And we ran into issues with that, right?
So they call me, they say, let's put in a rail, let's do this, let's do that. But
great ideas, not bad ideas.
They're good ideas, and it would be helpful. But when it comes to putting in structures, especially along waterways in Oregon, there are restrictions. There has to be removable devices. There can't be permanent. It's got to be permanent structure.
If there's flooding, it has to be able to float.
It's got to be able to
be. Fish.
Sometimes it's got to be required to be removed seasonally. So it could be something along those lines, and then it has to be material that can be in floodwater that's not going to contaminate the water. So
these are all things that you guys have to consider.
The general public's like, well, why aren't you putting in a rail in? We talked to you a year ago, and they don't realize there's 17 bullet points that go down a list that we have to check to see if it's even feasible. And that's like that with everything. And not only that, but you have to have the city support and again find the funding for it.
Aren't there
So
also here in Oregon at least laws against like how there's laws with how you can do construction on the waterfront because of erosion and because of how it affects the actual path of the water and the land once you're actually taking away land from
yes,
that. So there's all these different things that the normal passerby may not have any idea would go into any of this when it comes to parks and outdoor spaces, right?
it's true. And even in developing our baseball fields, putting in new dugouts and new grandstands, go through a water process because we flood up here. So
Yep.
even away from the river, where we're doing other park projects, has to go through a audit process of whether or not the structure is permanent or it can be removed or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So even away from the water, if it's somewhere where the water can affect, all those things have to go into it. So that's another bullet point process that can take a period of time as well.
But there have been some really cool projects that also I was surprised fell into the purview of the Parks Committee. And one of them was the tree. What was the tree that we did? It was the special tree from Japan.
Oh, the peace tree.
The peace tree. There's a peace tree project where it's these special types of tree that come from Japan. And it has to do with was it World War I? It was I'm trying to think back now, and my history is not that choice, but it has to do with peace after wartime and basically kind of promoting peace all over the world. They plant these trees that are native to Japan.
Started with Hiroshima.
Yes, started with Hiroshima. And so we had a gentleman come in and he said, we would like to, I'm working with this group that does this, and we would like to do a peace tree here in Vernonia. That process, just it's a tree, one tree in one spot in the town. And how many months, almost a year, did it take for us to get that approved?
Yeah, there was a process of maintenance, how to protect it from the wildlife going and eating it. Um, apparently, when it gets off its fruit, there's a pungent odor.
Yeah, if it's a male or female tree, has a big impact on
Right, and so there's several processes to go through to make sure that it was protected. It wasn't going to be killed. Who was going to take care of it? Who was going to clean the area surrounding it?
Where were we going to put it?
Where were you going to put it?
The argument about what park to put it in was
So that was another process that like you can't even plant a tree in the woods
in the woods.
without
we're in the
25
mountains,
pieces put with it.
We live in the mountains, and there was a year-long discussion about one tree. And then there was the process of planning the unveiling of the tree, and you guys actually did a ceremony, so you had to plan that as well, along with the city, and put together basically this little event on top of the process of getting the whole thing approved and done, right?
Yeah. So
it was a nice little event.
It was a nice event. The coordinator from Southern Oregon, I believe, came. That's the main proprietor of this group. Came and did a whole ceremony with music and explaining the peace tree and checking out the location. So yeah, it's a process. Little things like that can take up to a year to get done. So
now, I'm asking this because honestly, this is something that I really should know myself, and I might edit this out because I don't know it. And so, if we have nothing to talk about, then we have nothing to talk about. We'll move on. Is the Parks Committee involved at all in the planning of the Vernonia Friendship Jamboree?
That's an interesting question. The entire jamboree is focused around our parks. So
that's why I asked, because I figure there's aspects at least.
Last year, I was asked to co-chair the Jamboree Committee because I was the chairman of the Parks Committee, and because we were developing a new layout, we felt that it was good that we worked together to make sure the new layout went well.
So I want to let everybody know really quickly, the Vernonia Friendship Jamboree is a very large scale, 3-day long, basically kind of mini fair that we have here in our town. It has one of the largest logging shows, one of the longest along the West Coast, one of the longest running logging shows. It regularly hosts the longest running softball tournament in the United States, I believe.
It's been going for, I believe,
softball tournament.
52 years.
Yeah. And then we have vendors that come in. We have food that comes in. We have a rodeo now that comes in. So there's a lot of different aspects of it. But all the events are taking place and being hosted in the city parks.
Now, where the crossover comes is like the softball players camp in our parks. So if there's a fee change or if there's going to be different processes for them to come and utilize the parks and the campground, that's where the Parks Committee will then get involved with the city. They'll make a presentation. We'll come back and give them a new fee scale. So that's where they kind of cross over, is when things like that need to be upgraded or changed or things like that. So
Cool, cool. Are there other aspects of either being involved in a parks committee per se, or just in terms of like planning for outdoor spaces that you think people should know about that they don't really think about?
I think people take for granted the people that are really working hard to make the community what it is. Um, Fortunately, up here being in the smaller community, you kind of know the people that are involved in the inner workings of the community. And so there's more appreciation given. The appreciation usually comes out by somebody asking you if you helped them on a new project. That's how you know you're doing well. In the bigger cities, the committees are small compared to the population. So, you may have somebody on the committee for 10 years in Beaverton working with the city, but you may have never even met them or heard of them because there's 150,000 people in that area. But up here, it's a little bit more fulfilling to do that kind of work because people do get to know you in the community. People know that you care about where you live and that you care what it looks like and you care about the people around you. And when you genuinely are doing it to be a part of the community and make it a better place to live for people to visit and to live in, it's definitely more fulfilling to do it in a smaller town setting like this than it would be to do in a city. I don't think I would enjoy doing it in a bigger city.
I think for your personality in particular, you might not. But I do wonder if you think that whether people live in a small area or a larger area, or even if they have the opportunity just to work in their particular neighborhood with a committee of some kind, or, people have like the neighborhood watches and they have kind of their small little community within their larger suburb areas. Do you think it's worthwhile for people to look into ways that they can get involved with whatever committee or whatever planning group it is that works on their outdoor spaces? What would they benefit from getting involved somehow?
If you plan to live in a community for a period of time, especially a long period of time, I think it's very important to get involved and do what you can to help that community. Um, you're a part of it. You may have kids growing up within the community, other family members that may live in the community. So I think it is important that if you have time to donate some of that to community projects, whether it's a cleanup or a park idea or just any kind of thing you can help within your neighborhood. I think it's a good thing to do. If we don't help each other, then it's going to be somebody else's hands, and then we can't complain about what happens because we didn't decide to put our hand in the pot.
Right.
So I feel like if you want to make change, if you want to see improvements in certain areas, then get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just sit back. Don't let somebody else do it and think that it's going to be done the way you want it. So I think being involved in these community projects is very important and kind of makes you feel more part of the community.
And it doesn't even necessarily have to be parks. I mean, that's where our experience has been. But we've had experience in other areas as well. And pretty much anything that you feel that you can give your input into, your time into, or just offer a helping hand every now and then and say, hey, I see that this part of our community could use assistance. How can I help? What do you guys need? Is a really great way to show the people who are putting the work in to make your outdoor spaces and the community that you live in a livable space, to show them that you appreciate it. Even if they end up saying, you know what, we don't really need any help, thanks so much. Just the idea that somebody was willing to say, hey, I'm available if you need me, goes a long way.
And just to kind of expound on that a little bit, you don't have to be a part of a committee like she was saying, but look within your community, kind of like third party projects. Like we have a radio station out here in Portland that does a thing called Trash Bandits. And so they get together a couple of times every few months and they pick a park and they vote on which park to go clean up as a group. And you can find those kind of ideas online and stuff. So even if you're not a part of a committee, you can find these third party projects that you can attach yourself to and take your kids out there, show them what a good deed is. And, I know a lot of people bring their kids to these events, but yeah, food pantries and things like that. There's always projects going on within communities that you can Google and search and be a part of. So you don't have to join a long-term committee or be a part of anything major, but say you want to go help for a weekend. There's always something going on that you can get involved in.
One of the ones that I've enjoyed doing a couple of times now is Friends of Trees, which is a local nonprofit that works on green spaces in the area, planting
shrubbery and trees and stuff, especially like in wetlands areas where the way that the landscape is built up is really important to the ecosystem. You know, and we just go for a day for a couple of hours and we get muddy and we plant some trees, and it's people of all ages doing this kind of stuff. And so there's lots of different ways that you can get creative and get involved with you know, stepping out into your spaces that you enjoy using outdoors and getting hands on with it, right?
Yep.
So cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today, and I hope that we've inspired some of you guys to maybe go out there and find a way to make a difference in your community. And Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Look at that. My mic was muted. Okay, I almost had it all good today, you guys. That's a conversation that Jason has actually been really excited to have here on Coffee Breaks for a while now, because it is one of those topics that I think that people don't really stop and think about. So now when you go out into those green spaces and public spaces and park spaces, I hope that you all kind of look at those spaces a little differently, maybe with the mindset of what can I do to get involved? How can I show appreciation to the people who make these spaces possible? So thank you again, Jason, for having that conversation with us today. And thank you for everybody involved in the conversation. I think that actually we had some really awesome comments on that today. So, well, I want to share with you what is coming up on Coffee Breaks over the next couple of weeks. Steve is gone for one more week. So next week, you will have me and our other very popular guest host, Shalane Shepherd. We're going to be having what I expect to be a very interesting conversation. We're calling AIAIO. And if you haven't guessed it yet, we're going to be talking about the maybe somewhat controversial topic of AI and how it's used today, how Shalane and I have both started using it in our own personal lives. And we may have a guest on with us to give a different point of view that maybe some of you have thought about, maybe you haven't. So we're going to see if that guest makes an appearance, but it should be a very interesting topic. So I'm kind of excited about that one. And then on September 13th, we're not having any coffee breaks that week. That's a reset week. Steve will be coming back and kind of, after being gone for almost a month, needs a little minute to breathe. So we're going to take a break on that week. And we'll see you guys on the following week, where we will have a wonderful guest. I'm very excited to have her on the show. We're going to be talking about leading with compassion with Kate White, who is a dear family friend we've known for a very long time. And she has a very interesting perspective on this from multiple points of view in her professional and personal life. So I hope you'll join us for that conversation on September 20th. It should be great. And then we've been talking about this for several weeks now. We would like to do an episode about book clubs. I don't believe any of the production staff on Coffee Breaks with Steve have ever actually been in a book club, but it is something that piques our interest. So we'd love to hear from those of you who've got experience with book clubs. If you know somebody who is in a book club or runs a book club that might be interested in chatting with us about this, we want to hear from you. And we'd like to hear from several different people, because we're kind of considering having a situation where we have multiple people on as guests to talk about this. So if you're interested in appearing on an upcoming episode of Coffee Breaks to talk about your experience, again, please email us at cbwsteve@comcast.net. Make sure you include your name, email address, and phone number, and then put the subject of the book club in the email so that we know that that's what that's for, because we want to make sure we touch base with you on that. And if there are other topics that you'd like to discuss, or specific guests that you would like to see on the show, somebody that you know or have encountered, or just think would make a really great conversation, we would love to hear about that from you. We're always looking for interesting new things to talk about and great guests to have on the show. So definitely email that information as well to cbwsteve@comcast.net and share those ideas with us. And you may or may not know that we are on YouTube. So we'd like to invite everybody to check out our YouTube channel, subscribe there. A lot of people aren't on Facebook. It's kind of a funny joke that it's kind of for the old fuddy-duddies. So, there's a lot of the younger people who use different apps and don't use YouTube so much, Facebook so much. See, this is what happens when I don't have my coffee for the day. They don't use Facebook so much, but so many people are on YouTube. So this would be a really great way for you to share what's on with Coffee Breaks with Steve with those people that you may know who are not on this platform regularly. So you can find us on YouTube at CBWS, and don't forget to subscribe and share that with your friends. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I know that you're all looking forward to having Steve back. He will be back soon. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with Shalane and I anyway over the last couple of weeks. And I really hope you'll join us for next week's conversation. It should be a really interesting one. I want to invite everybody to find a way to make a difference in your world this week. And I hope you have a great day.